Mikel Foster. When I was a little girl, it seemed as if I spent all my waking hours with my father. If he visited his buddies, we went to the store, or took a walk, he took me along. I thought the sun rose and set on him. He was tall, slender, and handsome. In my eyes, he was stronger than any superhero on television. More importantly, he adored me. I was his little girl. My world changed when I was 3 and my parents separated. My wonderful image of my father changed most of all. I didn't think that when my daddy separated from my mother that he would separate from me as well, but that is exactly what happened. He rarely came to visit my brothers and me, and when he did, the visit was disappointing. He would promise to pick us up to visit the zoo or some other fun place. Yet, when the appointed day came around, he was nowhere to be found. I took the disappointment hard. With tears streaming down my cheeks, I'd angrily vow to never believe him or talk to him again. But moments later, I would be asking God, please bless my daddy and help him get his life straightened out. In return, I promised God I would be nicer to my little brother Michael, not sleep in church while the minister preached, and put all my church money in the offering basket instead of saving it for the ice cream man. Eventually, I would begin to understand that no prayer would change my father. He would change only if he wanted to change himself. I think my experience with my father taught me something valuable. I realized that since I was in control of no one's life except my own, I should concentrate on taking charge of my own life. My mother provided me with a good example of how to take control of one's life. Instead of worrying about my father's life, she concentrated on her own and that of her children. She went to great lengths to make sure that we had the necessities and desires of our hearts. Watching her work and struggle to provide for us, I knew I could never repay her by becoming a failure. No matter how tough her day was, she made time to hear about what happened in school. She was my biggest fan, and I made sure I got good grades in order to hear her praise. One of the biggest gifts my mother gave me was making me realize the importance of family. When she heard my brothers and me fighting, she was quick to step in. With one hand on her hip and the other pointing at us, she would passionately remind us, friends are going to come and go, but the bond that you share as brothers and sisters is stronger than any friendship. No matter what happens, you will always need each other. Although she saw how hurt we were by our father's lies, she would not allow us to speak badly of him. That's still your father, and you will respect him. As strange as it may sound, I think I learned to be dependable from both my parents. Through their examples, I learned that the true test of a person's character is not what is said, but what is done. When the time arrived for me to begin school, I was excited about becoming a big girl with my own book bag and lunchbox. Learning to read, write, and spell were adventures to me. One of the best parts of school was learning about other people's lives. Our school books, stories I read in the library books, and our teachers all provided fascinating information about the many different ways in which people lived. So when I was in 3rd grade and our school sponsored a role model day with many guest speakers, I was excited. Police officers, firefighters, lawyers, pilots, accountants, they would all have interesting stories to tell us. Imagine my special excitement when my 3rd grade class heard the local disc jockey was coming as the major speaker of the day. DJ T was as close to a celebrity as most of us had ever known. My friends and I clustered on the sidewalk awaiting his arrival. He drove up in a candy apple red sports car and walked coolly up the sidewalk towards the school. We gazed at him in awe. His black leather pants were accented by a colorful silk shirt and shiny watch. He glanced at us through his dark shades and gave us a smooth hello. We girls thought he was the most handsome man alive and practically went into a coma. The boys saw him as the coolest person walking the earth. We sat anxiously in our seats as DJT appeared on the auditorium stage. I gazed at him adoringly, waiting to hear his assurance that I could become anything I wanted to be. Instead, our local hero gave a speech that shocked and frightened me. In the most serious tones, he told us, "The majority of you sitting here listening to me will not make it. Some of you will turn to a life of crime, violence, and drugs. A few of you will die before you turn 20. Half of you will become parents while you are still in school. Sad as this speech may be, this is the reality of your future." He slowly looked over the audience, and it seemed that he was looking straight at me. I sat terrified, feeling as if those who would and would not make it had been assigned, and I had been chosen as one who wouldn't. The bright sunshine of the day disappeared, and dark clouds took its place. As my shock subsided and I was able to think clearly again, one thought stood out. DJT was wrong to say those awful things, and I was going to prove it. I promised myself 3 things that day. First, I was going to make it. Second, if I ever got the chance to stand before third-grade students, I would never forecast such gloom and doom for them. And lastly, I would never put anyone on a pedestal and be disappointed again. Although I was only 8 years old when I made these promises, they continue to guide my life today. Whenever the pressures of life seem more than I can bear, I reflect back on my promises and my focus is renewed. When it was time to enter middle school, I looked at the lay ahead. The school that my friends and I would be entering sounded bad to me. I heard about the fights and drugs that were part of the daily scene there. I wanted something better, so I managed to transfer to a music school in the district where I could play viola in the school orchestra. In the months and years ahead, I kept track of what happened to students I knew who went to the public middle school. When I did, I saw DJT's horrid description of our futures becoming reality. 7th grade girls were becoming mothers. The numbers increased so fast that having a baby in junior high was the norm. One of my friends had 3 kids before she finished junior high. Many of the boys sought the fast life, living in a community where honest money was hard to come by. I wasn't surprised to learn that a friend was dealing drugs. Young kids working as lookouts for drug dealers earn more money than their parents. Many of my friends were in jail. Others were dying violent deaths. Drugs were invading our neighborhood, but nothing prepared me for drugs invading my family. Some of my aunts and uncles became loud and belligerent. They were unable to sit down when they visited, and they visited only when they needed money. Possessions started disappearing from our house. I hated what was happening in the community, but I hated more what was happening to my family. As if all this were not enough, drive-by shootings were happening everywhere. Some of my classmates were victims. Now I was really scared. I could say no to drugs, crime, and teenage pregnancy, but how could I avoid being killed by a stray bullet? No matter how much of a good girl I was, I could still be the victim of a bullet intended for someone else. When this was my reality, how could I expect more out of life? Somehow I did manage to expect more. I couldn't deny the hard reality of the cards that had been dealt me, but I wasn't about to give up hope. Others around me might have accepted DJT's horrible prophecy for their lives, but that didn't mean I had to do so. I prayed each time I left my home and gave thanks each time I reached my destination safely. Each new day, I felt a step closer to the success I knew was around the corner. Throughout high school, the problems that had begun in middle school became even more serious. More and more of my classmates dropped by the wayside, becoming statistics lost to drugs, crime, and teenage parenthood. I concentrated harder on my academics, on involvement in clubs, on volunteering time in a health clinic. My efforts paid off. By seizing control of my life, I graduated at the top 10% of my class and was on the pathway of success. I was accepted at High Point University in North Carolina. College acceptance is not the end of my struggles. I had earned a partial scholarship and some other financial aid, but I was still several $1,000s short of what I needed to enroll. Every door I approached seemed tightly closed. My mother's money had been used up by getting my older brother through college. but I spoke to friends, relatives, anyone I thought could help me. I persisted until I received a work-study grant from the same financial aid office that had said nothing could be done. I was now a fully enrolled freshman majoring in sports medicine and earning a B+ average. I know that all my obstacles are not behind me. A missed assignment, financial aid problems, homesickness, illness, discrimination, or a change in career choice may make me stumble on my path, but I am ready to confront whatever happens. DJT was not looking at me that day he spoke at our school. I am in control of my life.